What is up, everybody? I'm George Mossey. This is the Family Chantel Season 4, Episode 11 podcast recap. So grab a snack, grab a drink, let's unpack this episode and see if we can uncover something you might have missed on this episode of the Family Chantel. Today is the day of the meeting that we have been leading up to all season. The meeting between Pedro and Chantel, where they will talk openly about their problems with their mediator, who happens to be Pedro's mother, Lydia. Now, I do want to say, last week I said that I was unsure if Lydia would be able to be an impartial mediator. So I have to say, I stand corrected. Lydia definitely was very impartial. She listened to both sides to try and help them find a resolution. The issue was they were only willing to talk about what each other was doing wrong and not able to discuss what they could do to make things better. Chantel wanted to talk about Antonella and the situation with the keys and her name, and Pedro wanted to talk about Chantel's lack of goals in her vacationing and mentioning she had been on 10 vacations in that year. Now, I don't think going on a vacation is a negative thing when you work hard. I think a vacation is definitely something that everyone deserves, but Pedro feels as though a vacation is something that he wants to earn and he wants to spend more time working and building his craft. After hearing both sides, Lydia said that since neither one of them are willing to compromise, she has washed her hands of the situation and removed herself from the table. She doesn't want to be there as she watches their marriage deteriorate. She feels that they're both adults and the decisions that they are making are going to be the demise of that marriage. Even though Pedro said he was going in with an open mind, it also seems as though he entered this meeting already with his mind made up about a separation. Chantel definitely did enter this meeting with an open mind because Chantel would have never had a meeting with Lydia and Pedro without having an open mind. So whether or not Pedro really did have an open mind for this meeting, I guess we might never know. Alejandro is once again in the Dominican Republic to support the love of his life, Nicole, but this time he brought gifts. Now, he was not bearing gifts of perfume or jewelry. This time he brought paperwork. Now, this paperwork is important to this relationship because, as you remember, when we met him in the previous season, he was married to someone else but separated, so his divorce had not gone through. He did bring the divorce papers to show Nicole and prove the seriousness of his relationship with her, and Nicole immediately felt it was time to take these papers to Lydia and show her so she could maybe stop being so negative and maybe even offer her approval and support for this relationship between them. As you guys know, Nicole has always felt that she had to choose between her family and Alejandro. And in that situation, it's very difficult because Nicole has a very small family and her family is the most important thing to her. So choosing between her mother and Alejandro was just a choice she was not willing to make. Upon arriving at Lydia's home, she doesn't give them any opportunity to give any explanation to even why they're there. Lydia begins lashing out and calling Alejandro a loser and saying that she needs to move on from him and even calling him a fool. Alejandro refuses to take this amount of disrespect and removes himself from Lydia's home and actually tells Nicole he can't understand why she wants Lydia's approval or even to have Lydia in her life. Nicole and Alejandro definitely aren't seeing eye to eye, and they're going to have to get through this hurdle together. Lydia is never going to give their stamp of approval, and she even said, "Do whatever you want to do, just leave me out of it." And that's going to be a decision Nicole is going to have to make on her own. Does she want to leave her mother out of her life and out of her relationship? And if so, is Alejandro worth that sacrifice? On a FaceTime call with Miss Karen, Chantel finally comes clean and tells her where she really is. Not in Arizona, but actually in the Dominican Republic for a meeting with Pedro's mother. And she finally opens up about what's been going on in her relationship. If you guys remember, Chantel has been very secretive about what's going on in her relationship because she wanted to go on and handle things and take care of her relationship and marriage on her own. She's been doing it completely alone outside of the help and support of her best friend Destiny, and Miss Karen is now willing to be that supportive ear for her. Now, Miss Karen has her reservations about why Pedro is acting this way and why things have changed after 6 years. And as you guys remember last week, There's a scam that Miss Karen calls Swanky Panky, where the guy is in a relationship for 5 to 6 years and then all of a sudden begins to treat the woman really badly and leaves her. And it usually happens with men from the Dominican Republic. Now, we still don't know why this situation is happening, if it's really regarding goals and flashes between Chantel and Pedro, but we will definitely have to look into this more because they seemed very, very happy in the past. I think it's very important that Chantel has opened up to her family. Support can mean the world to you in these situations. I think it's less about advice and more about just being there for the person and making sure that they feel seen and heard and understood. So Bad Girl Winnie is back on the dating scene. Now, if you remember a few episodes ago, we met Bad Girl Winnie and she is Winter's alter ego. Now she's back on the dating scene. She still has not found her person and she is being very picky, which I am actually very supportive of her being very picky because she was in a long relationship of 7 years. And I think it's very important that she doesn't date the first guy that catches her eye. She needs to find the right guy for her, like she says, her person. So she goes on a date with Philip at a go-kart facility / trampoline park, which seems really fun. And mindfully, she arrives at this date not knowing where she's going to go and what she's going to do. She's actually pleasantly surprised. She has a good time. And the fruits of her labor and hard work, she has nothing to worry about getting into the go-kart because the old Winter used to worry about getting into things like that. But the new Winter does not have any worry in the world other than being herself, being happy, being confident, which Philip really liked. Philip loved her confidence and her energy and her vibes. And we do too. Winter is definitely giving us positive vibes. The only issue with Philip that Winter could find is that he has 3 kids, and she normally wouldn't date anyone that already has kids, but she can't get over the fact how much that she likes him. So I think it's great that she's looking past the idea of him having kids, and she's just basically getting to know him for who he is. Sometimes we prejudge people based on things that we know about them without giving them any time to explain or show us who they really are. So I think it shows how smart Winter is as a person, that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. The trip back to Atlanta gets a bit awkward and intense. There's not much talking in the cab or on the plane back home. And when they arrive, things have gotten even worse. And the thing that crosses Pedro's mind is maybe the connection and things in common that they thought they had in the beginning of their relationship were not as strong as they once believed. Pedro feels that maybe the physical connection is what kept them together, and they never really had enough in common to make the relationship work. Chantel, on the other hand, feels that Pedro doesn't see all of the sacrifices that she went through for them to be together. The multiple trips to the DR, putting her ring in her own name so she could get engaged to Pedro, and the K-1 visa process and how much money and time it took, and the long distance relationship, the multiple trips back and forth when she had little to no money. She feels like they've both lost sight of what's important in their relationship and what brought them together in the first place. In Chantel's mind, Pedro has become independent and has no need for her anymore. And unfortunately, that could mean the end of this marriage. Next week, we're gonna watch Pedro move into a different room of the house and meet with a divorce lawyer to see what his options are. Now, if this isn't the beginning of the end, I don't really know what is. Now, Chantel has made it extremely clear that she will not sign anything, but Pedro is definitely open to seeing what his options are. I am really hoping, since nothing is final yet, that they can find a way to work this out. But if divorce is the way to go, I want the best for everyone involved, and I wish them love and happiness in the end. We have to remember, in the end, these are real people living their lives through a television show that we are watching. So we want the best for them no matter what. All right, guys, that's it for this podcast recap episode of The Family Chantel, Season 4, Episode 11. I'm your host, George Mossey. Make sure you're live tweeting with me every Monday night for The Family Chantel, and I'm going to talk to all of you really soon.